Sun, wind, rain, snow. We're surrounded by the ceaseless energy of nature. These natural energy sources are called renewable because, unlike fossil fuels, they cannot be used up. They are renewed every minute of every day by nature without help from man. In this century, man's energy needs have increased to the point we have threatened to exhaust such stored fuels as oil and coal. The result has been a spiraling inflation in the cost of energy. In the past 30 years, many efforts have been made to harness the renewable energy sources: solar power, heat pumps, wind and tide generators. Until recently, these efforts have only been partly successful. Solar power only works when the sun is shining. Wind power only works when the wind is blowing. All these single energy sources are limited to particularly favorable climates. In addition, the new technologies have been experimental, not always reliable, and worst of all, too expensive for the ordinary home. But what if we could draw energy from all these natural power sources at once? And what if we could turn this energy into heat, using a dependable technology that is available anywhere in the country? And best of all, what if we could make this revolutionary device available to the customer without costing him one additional cent out of pocket? Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? Well, prepare to be surprised, because this tape will show you exactly how we can make it happen. We call it the alternative. We all know the refrigerator is the most dependable appliance in your home. It runs for years without attention. The alternative is a kind of refrigerator in reverse. If you'll put your hand near the coils of your refrigerator, you'll find a large amount of heat being given off. This is the kind of heat the alternative uses. Here's how it works. Because of its low boiling point, 20 below zero, the liquid Freon in the collector has been turned to Freon steam. There's a simple physical principle that gas under pressure becomes very hot, so our next step is to pressurize the Freon in a gas pump. The pressurized gas comes out of the pump at 180 degrees, much hotter than you could stand to touch. The hot gas is passed to a heat exchanger, and the heat is transferred to water. The water comes out of the heat exchanger at 138 degrees, still hotter than the water in a normal hot water heater. Let's look at the system in detail. The technology is simple and dependable. The completed unit requires very little space and can be installed in your home in a few days without major alterations or inconvenience. The electrical components of the system are contained in one small tray. Here the elements are assembled and wired. The piping and conduits for both liquid and gas are constructed with the long-proven techniques of refrigeration installation. The entire system is put under high pressure and tested for leaks. For absolute security, the system is tested both during assembly and when the unit is completely mounted in its case. The alternative is finished and ready to be delivered for installation.
These panels, believe it or not, can take heat out of sun, wind, rain, snow, sleet, and hail 24 hours a day or night. They also can provide 100% of the heat for your house, all your domestic hot water, at a tremendous amount of savings. You know, as incredible as it sounds, these panels really will even work at sub-zero temperatures. I'd like to show you a little demonstration of that. As you can tell, it's cold in this refrigerator. Right inside here, we got our evaporator collector sitting here in a little array. We got them all equally spaced. And if you notice, it's 10 degrees below zero inside here. This over here is the processor. This is the business end of the proposition. What we're doing here is we're taking the Freon, running it into the freezer, pulling the heat back out of the freezer, running it in here, and making hot water. We're delivering the hot water over here to a little crock pot. All the hot water in this crock pot is actually being made hot by all the heat we're pulling out of that freezer in dead airspace. You'll notice we got some awful hot water. It's 130 degrees. That's hot. No, a lot of people think that the alternative is a regular heat pump or another version of a heat pump. I've even heard it referred to as a super heat pump. Well, it isn't. As a matter of fact, the major difference between the heat pump and the alternative, our technology, is this collector area right here, our evaporator. You'll notice it's very thin, but we're taking Freon and circulating it through this evaporator, and the surface of this evaporator has a direct effect on the Freon inside. I'll show you why I say that in a second. Number one, at a heat pump, the ambient temperature, surrounding air temperature, is all important. Whatever the air temperature is, that's going to determine what it does. In this case, what happens to this panel, this collector, is what's going to determine what happens to the Freon inside. Give you a point in fact. If I had snow packed on top of this panel, a foot, foot and a half deep, the temperature of snow is around 30 degrees, above zero. The Freon that we put in will take heat out of anything warmer than 20 degrees below zero, 50 degrees of heat exchange. So if the outside temperature was 0 degrees, that wouldn't have much effect on something that has 50-degree effect on the Freon at that point in time. Another point would be if I had the sun shining directly on this panel, the panel can get as hot as 105 degrees. It's solid aluminum in a direct line with the sun. Now let's say it was a winter day and it's 50 degrees outside. What difference would that make if the sun was shining directly on the panel and I had something 105 that I was sending Freon through? As the wind, we'll take that force of nature as well, whips across the top of this massive surface area, 8 by 3, top and bottom, 10 different panels, you can see that the friction of the wind will not only heat up the surface area and affect the Freon gas going inside, but also the wind will cause a heat exchange to happen more rapidly.
The alternative works automatically, producing heat on demand and shutting off when none is needed. It isn't even necessary to remove your present heating system. In fact, it's to your advantage to leave it exactly as it is. The alternative is designed to work with your present system. It will heat your house as well as providing hot water. And every minute the alternative operates, you're saving expensive fossil fuels like oil and gas. In addition, we interface the alternative with your system in such a way that the alternative operates only when it can save you money. And if it isn't saving you money, you're paying nothing.
Last year we installed a remarkable heating device on hundreds of homes. This year we intend to install thousands more. The interesting and unique thing about the process was that our system was going on the homes of the average American. Middle-income America, possibly families just like your very own. The way we made that happen was through our own finance company called Conserve Financial Services. At Conserve Financial Services, we operate considerably different than any other finance company because what we've done through a very unique proposal is we have made it possible for you to have a piece of equipment installed on your home that will save you a lot of money, and all you'll be required to do is give us the money that the system actually saves until it's paid for. The offer is risk-free. Now, I didn't say free, I said risk-free, and there's a difference between those two concepts. In our offer, what we will do is we will provide the equipment to your home at no charge or cost to you whatsoever. You don't give us 1 cent of your money. We will fully install the equipment and have it up and operational, and even at that point in time, you will not have given us 1 cent of your own money. After it is running, we will then require that you will give us, Conserve Financial Services, all the money that the system actually is proven to save you until such time as it has paid for itself. That usually requires about 7 to 8 years. Now, the interesting thing about that is the system is designed to last for 20 or 30 years, so once it's completely paid for, you get to keep all of the savings, send your children through 4 years of college education or whatever you want to with the money. I'm sure you can find a better place for your family to put the money than where it's been going so far. You might say your energy supplier is buying you this energy conservation.
Well, one of the things I do recall is when before we had the system, we would have people over, and I wasn't going to turn the heat on above 62 because we couldn't pay the bill. And so one of the things that I remember saying to the man when he came out and talked to us about the system, I said, "Can I have my heat on at 70 all the time?" And he said, "Oh yes." And I don't hesitate to turn my system up to 68 or 70, and I don't care if the system's running for how long, I'm going to be warm. And it does work, and the bill is lower.
that our existing heating system was costing so much and continuing to go in a certain way, and that was up, going higher and higher all the time. So we knew something had to be done. And so looking at this, of course, attracted my attention as a way to save some money. Our neighbor's solar system uses the sun entirely or exclusively, where one of the advantages of this system seemed to be that we could use just the ambient temperature of the air. And in this area seemed to be very practical for us. As you can look outside right now, with the rain coming down, our neighbor's system isn't really working too well. Where ours, here in this great Pacific Northwest, is just working just fine.
So I realize customer rates is going to go up. And that's one thing, I can't afford to pay a lot of money for my heating bills because I have other financial responsibilities. So when I first heard about this, and there's no money coming out of my pocket to buy the system, I decided, well, this is the way to go to save on my heating bill.
As we've just seen, there are two revolutionary ideas involved in the alternative. The first is technological. Because of the low boiling point of the Freon gas, we can use all the natural conditions of nature to produce heat energy. And we can do so with a proven technology that has been perfected over many decades. The second idea is financial. You pay for the alternative only with the money you save on energy bills. Nothing extra comes out of your own pocket. How can we offer such a unique program? Because we know our system will save you money. The energy savings are so great that the alternative will usually pay for itself in 7 or 8 years. After that time, all the money you save goes directly into your own pocket. In addition, the alternative will add substantially to the resale value of your home, but will add nothing to your property taxes. You can save money, guard against future energy shortages, and increase the value of your home, all with just one decision that will cost you nothing out of pocket. You don't pay unless you save money, and then you pay only the money you've saved. In days like these, can you afford not to investigate this opportunity?
It's a little jerry-rigged now because it is not exactly what you have on your home. That's electricity, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's probably enough. That's probably enough, yeah. We've got to keep moving in order to get everybody out on time. Okay, that's electricity. It's being turned by Freon. Okay, now, one last thing that we said we would demonstrate for you, but we haven't demonstrated yet. Do we have that hot box? We're going to demonstrate the hot box? Where's the hot box? We didn't bring the hot box? It's in the trailer. What's it doing in the trailer? I got to show these guys I can hold a lot of heat in a small space that doesn't get hot. Where's the trailer? I tell you what, why don't we use your bun warmer? Why don't you get up? What you got there, guy? You been sitting on that thing all night long? What the heck is inside of there? Oh, let's see there. That looks kind of peculiar. Is that hot? Now, we did not run it up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, but if you notice, he just made some steam by just pouring a few drops of water on that thing. We don't want to take a chance on burning down a historic building, so we're not going to run that up to 2,000 degrees, because if anybody tipped it over, it'd fall right through the floor. But that's pretty hot. Feel the outside temperature of what Wade has been sitting on all night long. Be happy to just have you grab that. Go ahead and touch it. Anybody want to just touch it? Go ahead, stand up for and we're just lighting a light bulb. We got leaks like crazy. Whoa, my goodness. Okay. All right, so the pump isn't sticking. Okay, electricity. There we go, electricity. You can read by it. You can power your house. All you have to have is one of these. Move the couch out of the living room, put one of these here, set your easy chair up next to it, and read. Today. This unit right here would sit there and produce 5 kilowatts of electricity. It would run for an entire hour. It would run all day. It would run all night. It would run all year. It would run all decade. It would run and run and run and run and produce electricity as long as we had heat on the bottom in a boiler that was 200 to 250 degrees, which this can do easy. And then on the top side, we had to have a lake. So we had to have a lake on the top so that we could cool that back down. Remember, the electric company has to have a condenser. We had to have a condenser as well. So as long as we had lake water running on the top cylinder on that, so up here, the top cylinder, if we had lake water running in that, it would then trickle back down as a liquid. And then if we had heat from the air at 200 degrees going into the bottom of it, it would get the gas excited, and as the gas turned past a turbine, it caused it to turn, and then that shaft was connected to the shaft of a generator. It would sit there and produce electricity. It would run all day and all night. So as long as you had the heat on the bottom and the cold water from the lake on the top, it would just sit there and run and run and run and run and run and produce electricity. Now, if we could do that, and we could take energy out of the air, and we could cool it down with a lake, that was wonderful, but I had a problem, ladies and gentlemen. My problem was I had pledged to set the Americans free from the grid system in the electric utilities company. And by the way, it would run if you had a lake and you had a lot of water, but how many people here have a lake on their property? Not too many people have a lake on their property here. So therefore, only the people here who have a lake are the only ones that I could set free of the grid system with that technology. We had a problem, ladies and gentlemen. However, I could make electricity or mechanical energy for farmers because all farmers have a lake. Anytime you get ready. Okay, 30 light bulbs. We're just expanding it through. You see the torque here? And we've still got enough power to keep them glowing. We don't do this one here because that's the one we did when we first started. That was our demonstration when we first started, that one light bulb. We had a little Rockwell motor inside here that was leaking like a sieve, and Freon was going and that one lit. Pardon? Oh, that was the pump that circulates the water through here. I'll show you that. That's good. Okay. This unit right here would sit there and produce 5 kilowatts of electricity.
It would run for an entire hour. It would run all day. It would run all night. It would run all year. It would run all decade. It would run and run and run and run and produce electricity as long as we had heat on the bottom in a boiler that was 200 to 250 degrees, which this can do easy. As we take the pressure off of this, take the brake off, we're going to take off now with the unit that's operating in a closed loop with no condenser, and when we took the brake off of this unit, it really took off. The key to this whole process is trial and error balancing, balanced together with educated guesses. But this right now that you see running is a very high torque, low RPM engine in action. They said it couldn't be done, but that engine is running with absolutely no condenser whatsoever in the process. And it runs in a closed loop, so it will make absolutely no noise whatsoever as it runs. There it is. You see it with your own eyes.
I made the mistake of thinking I just had to build a working model and demonstrate it, and the world would come rushing in to congratulate me. The world did indeed come crashing in, rather than rushing, around me instead. The sheriff of Ventura County, California, with plenty of help, confiscated my technology before it could even be demonstrated, and as a result, I was not able to show it to the public beyond the half-dozen or so workers that we had in the research facility who had witnessed it prior. We did, after an expert testified in open court that it did not work at my preliminary hearing, we were able to prove that it did work to the judge in that case. Charges were brought against me for fraud, and I was supposed to still be in prison at this day that I'm cutting this because I was amassing something like a 40-year prison term. The charges, all the criminal charges, were dismissed by the judge that we proved in a court of law that the technology did work, and all the criminal charges were dismissed before having any kind of a trial. A private citizen videotaped the raid and refused to stop filming when the sheriff deputies threatened him, as shown on the video. And then they had their own cameraman come in and take his picture. They tried to intimidate him out of videotaping, but he said he was making a documentary, and he's a private citizen, and he didn't work for me. And so they had no choice but to let him continue to film this. And so the video that you're watching was, we have a citizen to thank for that. Then they got their cameraman to come over and take his picture so that they could know who this citizen was.
You get trained. It's like my father-in-law is a retired chief on the sheriff's department down south. That mentality, you get trained, if there's a shadow of anything, you walk away from it.
Yeah.
This forced me into a decision today. You know, I had to walk up to the news lady, give my name and my address, and make a very positive statement to this company, which was against the grain of everything I've been brought up on.
Yeah, yeah.
Not in the fact that I don't believe it, but just in the fact that you don't get involved in controversial things, you know. Just play it safe.
Just keep your head low and then go through life.
So I did this, and I suddenly realized that today, for the first time in my life, I stood up for something I believed in. You know, so
it's a great day.
Yeah, and that won't take in for a while, you know. You just kind of float along, but it's a unique experience. Most people don't experience that. You know, most people just go day by day, and you know, they'll sit by their TVs and go, "Yeah, I believe in that."
Yeah, but when it comes down to being there and having to make the quality decision to go for it, you know, And what we offer to America is that. I mean, people can make the quality decision to get behind this thing.
And what
this is unstoppable.
Right,
It really is.
What's unfortunate people don't understand is what makes you alive.
Yeah. Oh, to believe in something, man.
Yeah.
To believe in something has been. I've been drugged behind the bottom of a car for the last couple of years, man. But it's something I really care about.
Yeah.
Believe in, and you just won't stop. You just keep going. You'll find out that what you're made out of too. But it's easier.
Yeah.
It's easier if you really believe in something. I mean, how do people that don't believe in what they're doing or know they're slitting somebody's throat, how do they sleep at night? You know,
they sleep the way they're trained to sleep.
Oh, I understand.
It's not until you reach something or get something that you finally understand and can believe in that you realize what you've been doing all that time up until then. There's no way to realize it.
Yeah.
Because you aren't there. You haven't experienced it. You're ignorant of it. Then when you become exposed to it, there's a whole educational process that goes on and a realization. You go, God.
Yeah.
You know. Then you got to go from this day onward and say, okay, now I know, and now I'm going for it.
Cab, could you give us a little background on your previous employment before you came here to Conserve Financial Services?
Yeah, I was a deputy sheriff for LA County for 4 years, a criminal investigator for the public defender's office in LA County for 2 years, harbor patrolman down in Marina Del Rey for 4 years, and just recently I was the harbor captain of Channel Islands Harbor for 3 years before I came out of this company. So it's not like I don't know what law enforcement is all about. It's just that I've never really been on this end to feel what people feel when this type of action takes place, regardless of what the outcome is. It still will get your attention.
And the nucleus of this company is never been willing to give up the battle and get the technology out to the people who need it. And anyway, it's just another skirmish in a long battle. And, this is a battle against ignorance and greed. That's where it is in the long run. Anyway, as you know, and as everybody else should know, that 2 days ago we told the world we actually did have the technology in hand that could produce electricity at no operating cost, with no environmental impact. Just a little cool spot in your yard, and all the heat taken out of there will be made into electricity. And at no operating cost, so we're talking about the elimination of fossil fuels, nuclear reactors, hydroelectric projects, and the like. Coal-fired power plants, acid rain, air pollution. It's all something for the history books. That's what we're trying to do. And anybody tries to do anything great or really change something has to go through this anyway. The guys who are currently sitting on top of that market aren't going to give it up very easily, apparently. We'd like them to. We'd like them to join our market, but
Yes, they were on all the big
maybe they don't want to see it that way.
Even those digital pagers. On we go.
On we go.
Who works with the Conserve Financial Services. He works very closely with many inventors from around the nation on very, very incredible machinery. And as you know, the things that have happened today, Mr. Fraser has some comments for what's going on. Mr. Fraser, please tell us what you're thinking.
Well, in my position in research and development, I see highly proprietary things, many of which have been entrusted to us by inventors who have been virtually raped by the system again and again. And they won't even patent stuff because it just gets ripped off by the big boys who just, there's no protection in a patent, really, unless you're big enough to be able to prevail in court. So they've all found that out, as most of us have. So they've entrusted us with these things on our honor because we were going to proceed to develop and are proceeding to develop some to put into the marketplace. With the simple stroke of a judge's pen, whoever our persecutors are right now have access to information that in total, with everything we're doing, could affect the worldwide market to the tune of trillions of dollars. And they've gotten it for free. Some of the best minds in this country have worked on some of this stuff. And they get pictures or drawings. They're in there taking pictures of the proprietary material. They have no right to it all. Has nothing to do with them. Much has nothing to do with energy companies. Has nothing to do with anything that we promote directly. It has to do with other things that we were going to develop to put through our network. And many, many people, innocent people, are going to suffer a lot. And you're not talking about a few dollars. You're talking about so much money it boggles your mind.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
my
Frazier.
comment. That really, really upsets me that in the United States of America that you can have a fascist operation like this, because that's just what you're talking about. You can just go in and expropriate people's stuff, or whatever the legal word is. That probably some attorney's going to laugh at that choice of words, but whatever the word is, they can come in and virtually just steal your stuff. Steal stuff that's extremely valuable.
We have something to issue here.
Yeah, you know, can you imagine someone going in and being able to steal the formula, force Coca-Cola to give them their formula? Why haven't they done that? And everybody can have it. They just steal proprietary rights. I mean, how is this done in this country? Is this the United States? If it is, I'm really dismayed. I served in Korea in the Marine Corps to protect this country. And I wonder now what any of us are doing, standing up and trying to be heard and to make this a better world, and that's all we're here for. We're really trying to do something to change this world we live in. And these guys are so selfish and greedy, all they care about is their profit margin, the bottom line. They don't care what we're doing. Let the lakes in the Northeast, some thousands of them, are totally dead from acid rain. The Black Forest in Europe dying from acid rain. The pollution in our oceans. We're trying to stop that. They're not. What they're trying to do is maximize their bottom line. We wanted these people to work with us. We weren't out to do them in. We've invited them. Every pitch Dennis has made has been to invite them to work with us. So we really don't know how underhanded our fellow Americans can be to try to stop something which is not just for the betterment of Americans, this is for the betterment of everyone in this world. And that was our plan. It is our plan.
I think the plan's going to continue on. In spite of this harassment that's occurred, they've got a lot of information. What you say is really disturbing. I hope that we can continue on in spite of it. It won't be easy, I'm sure.
No, that makes our job pretty tough.
This unit right here has the capability of taking energy out of the air, putting heat energy into a boiler, using a gas, a low temperature phase change gas, something that boils at a low temperature, running it into that little boiler on the bottom right there, ladies and gentlemen. So the gas is in the little bottom, the boiler in the bottom. This is a compressor. This compressor hooked up to panels out here would actually be taking the heat energy out of the air and supplying heat into the boiler. So the energy through panels, and it's not practical to put it up here together like that tonight. And so what we're going to use is we're going to use a water tank over here to supply the heat at that temperature. Now you know you can't get over that temperature of that water tank, and so we're using the right temperature here. And we're going to supply the heat into the boiler. But while we're doing this, I want you to know this right here, this compressor is going to be running even while we're taking the energy from that water tank to put it into the boiler. Anyway, as the energy from here went into the boiler, that would then get the gas excited. The gas would come up here into a controller and hit a piston. Now, this little cylinder right here is an air cylinder. As the gas hits one side, boom, it goes this way. Then the gas is sent to the other side and released from that side, and boom, it comes back. And so this unit will just be sitting here going boom, 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 boom. as long as the gas is coming out of that boiler, it'll just be operating back and forth, back and forth. As it runs back and forth, we hit a series of sprag clutches over here. When the show is over, you can come down here and see this. You can look at it. It hits the sprag clutches. As the sprag clutches are turning, then we're getting this rotation on this shaft. So as this is going back and forth, the clutches are changing that direction so that we've got constant torque applied to one direction in this shaft. This wheel right here with a pulley on it, this is connected to the shaft, and so that is going to turn the compressor. So the motion going back and forth turns the wheel that drives the compressor that gives us the heat to put it in the boiler so that the motion back and forth can drive the compressor. So in essence, the compressor is driving the thing that turns this motor or this wheel, and this wheel is driving the compressor that turns it. These two are driving one another. Now also on this line here, we've got a pump. We've got a tank of water over here, and the tank of water in here, we're taking cold water out of the bottom of the tank with this pump. So this pump is pumping water out of the tank. It's going to then circulate the water up past this little condenser up here. As it hits the condenser is going to cool it down. Remember, that unit would run and run and run as long as there was heat on the bottom and cold on the top. So the tank is going to supply the cold on the top. Now, by the way, if you were a farmer and you had water in the ground and you were going to pump the water out of the ground, that water would be coming out of the ground cold, and so that could be going into this condenser. So the pump could be pumping the water out to create the low side on here to cool the other side of this whole unit down. It's kind of interesting because as this cools it down, it recycles the liquid back into the boiler. This is heating it up. This is driving what heats it up, and that's driving the pump that's pumping the water. So this unit, ladies and gentlemen, in essence, would be able to sit here for a farmer and pump water absolutely free. No cost to the farmer at all. He could be pumping water out of the ground that's cooling it down, using the thing he's cooling down to pump the water. Let's see if we can do that here now. We all set up here? Okay, we're going to turn this unit on, and by the way, not only could we drive the pump that pumps the water, but we also got a little generator hooked up here, and we're also going to produce some electricity with the excess energy that we're getting out of this unit. So we will also be driving the compressor, and I'll create suction on a compressor to show you this compressor is running now as we're doing this. I'll load the compressor and show you it is running. Okay, we ready to go, guys? Whenever you're all ready, let me know, and we'll just go for it. Okay, here it is, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be looking here in a second to see if we're pumping water. Okay. Now you notice that this thing right here is driving this thing, which is driving this thing, and if you listen, that compressor is running. Okay, are we going? You want to do the water? Okay, let's see if we're pumping water. Do you see that, ladies and gentlemen? You see us pumping water here? Okay, so now we're pumping water. That water's coming from the bottom of the barrel, going through this mechanical device, and then pumping the water back into the unit. We're pumping the water. We sit there and pump water actually all day long. You got to have the high side and the low side. Now, so if a farmer is out there and a farmer's got a pump and he's spending $100,000 a year to pump water, we can design a system for him that can sit there and pump the water for him absolutely free. Also, we could run a unit that could make electricity for hotels, because if they've got water for all of the baths and showers that everybody has to take, then the reject water that's going into the showers, the cold water, could be cooling down the low side of that unit. Let me show you that next video. So we'll show them the first video then, Charlie. And this is a unit that can also produce electricity. It did it in our shop. So this is a video from our shop. Okay, video from our shop. The audio's out on this one, but that's all right. And if you notice, what they're doing is they're taking the unit, they're running a wheel. The wheel is turning there. From energy, we're using the same principle, concept we got right here, but we got a generator on that one, and then that generator, taking the energy from the air, can light 20 light bulbs. So we can light 20 light bulbs from the energy we take out of the air. Now that unit is kind of a Rube Goldberg looking unit, and it's kind of got this great big hydraulic piston on it, and that hydraulic piston is going back and forth and making actually a lot of noise. I don't know why we don't have the soundtrack here tonight, but, and if you look at it up close, it looks kind of like jet. I'd like to just now introduce you to Eric Brower. Come on up here, Eric. Eric has worked in our facility for the last year, or a little over a year, and was also recently inducted into the International Inventors Hall of Fame for the work that he's done. But Eric right here is going to be the man who's going to demonstrate this thing for you. And in essence, I'm just going to talk you through it while Eric is going to set up the test. Now this engine right here is a 318 cubic inch Chrysler engine. Now, by the way, on this engine right here, we have 2 cylinders on an 8-cylinder engine that have been modified. 2. Over here we can activate either one of these cylinders and we'll get the torque right up here on the front end. If I modified the engine in your car right now, and I modified it so it wouldn't run on gasoline at all, but it didn't have any power at all, you wouldn't be very happy about that. You know why? If you were sitting at a stoplight, the light was green, and you couldn't even get through the intersection before it turned red again, you'd be pretty mad at me, wouldn't you? I can modify the engines of everybody's car right now to run with no gasoline at all. All I got to do is take your keys away from you. You won't burn any gas anymore, but you won't go anywhere either. Now this engine right here has been modified, but what we're going to do for you now, we are going to test the torque on this engine. So we're going to activate this engine, test the torque on the engine, and see how much power you got in that engine. Now, by the way, over here we have got a brand new torque wrench. It has never been used before. Eric is going to take it out of the package. This is a Sears Craftsman torque wrench, the finest torque wrench that you can get. Sears Craftsman. Now, that torque wrench right out of the package, Eric is going to take a pin over here and he is going to show you something in a second when I explain to you what kind of torque we're going to get out of this engine. Now, right over here, we'll take the torque wrench, put it on here. We're going to measure the torque that we get on this engine. We're going to activate 1 cylinder. Now, this is a V8 engine, so on a V8 engine, you got 8 cylinders. That means you have 4 power strokes, right? You got 4 power strokes, because half the time you're coming up to compress the gas, the rest of the time you got a power stroke. So you got 4 power strokes on a V8 engine. However, if we modified this engine to the Fisher-Brower cycle, you would have 8 cylinders, and therefore you'd have 8 power strokes because we're not burning any gas. So you'd have 8 power strokes. Now, if I was to test one of these cylinders and determine how much torque I get on 1 cylinder, this is a 318 cubic inch Chrysler engine. It is the smallest V8 engine Chrysler made. This is the little one. This is the smallest V8 engine Chrysler made. If you get a specification sheet from Chrysler and you look up what kind of torque you're supposed to get out of this engine, Chrysler says that this engine, burning gasoline with all 8 cylinders going, 4 power strokes, you would get 260 foot-pounds of torque out of this engine. if you were running this thing at about 1,600 RPMs. Now tonight what we're going to do is we're going to start from a dead stop. We're going to activate one of these cylinders and we're going to test the torque on it. Now let's explain to you how you can know how much torque you would get on all 8 cylinders if all of them were modified by merely testing one cylinder. If you've got one cylinder up on a V8 engine, you've got 2 cylinders up at the same time. Anytime one cylinder's up, there's another one up at the same time. So if I measure the torque on one cylinder all the way through a cycle, I would have to double that torque to account for the second cylinder that would be going through the same cycle. So if I got 100 foot-pounds of torque on this torque wrench, activating one cycle all the way through the cycle, then I would have to say there would be 200 foot-pounds of torque on the 2 cylinders that would go through that cycle together. And then there are 6 other cylinders somewhere in their travel, so to compensate for the other 6 cylinders and what would happen with those cylinders, take what you get on the 2 cylinders all the way through their cycle, divide that in half, and that's what you get on the other 6 cylinders. So what did I just say? If we test 100 foot-pounds of torque through one cylinder, we would then be showing that we could get 300 foot-pounds of torque on all 8 cylinders. All right, now, we're going to test the torque here, but before I do, I want to tell you one other thing. The biggest V8 engine Chrysler made puts out 380 foot-pounds of torque. 380 foot-pounds of torque. Now, whatever torque I get on one cylinder, if I multiply it times 3, that's what I'd get on all cylinders. So that's the key, multiply by 3. So if I take 260 foot-pounds on this engine, if I divide that by 3, how much is it? It's 85, roughly 85 foot-pounds. So therefore, if we test the torque on this engine, and Eric is going to show you where 85 foot-pounds is, if we go to 85 foot-pounds, oh, you do have it there. Okay. I didn't know they had that up there, but that's the data on the general engine specifications. If this little red needle right here, when we activate this, goes to where Eric's pin is, that's 85 foot-pounds of torque, that means that we would be getting on this engine modified to our principle the same power that Chrysler gets out of this engine running it on gasoline. So if it goes to there, we're as good as Chrysler. Now the biggest V8 engine that Chrysler made is 380 foot-pounds of torque. So therefore, if we take 380 foot-pounds of torque and divide it by 3, what do we get? About 126, 127? So Eric will show you where 126 foot-pounds of torque is on that wrench. Now, if that red needle, when we activate this, goes to where Eric's pin is on that torque wrench, then, ladies and gentlemen, we will be proving to you that we're getting the same torque out of this engine modified to the Fisher-Brauer concept as Chrysler gets out of the biggest V8 engine that they made. And this is the smallest V8 engine that they made. All right, so we're going to set up the test now, and we're going to prove to you what's going on. You guys ready? Go ahead. Go ahead, Eric's going to set up the test. Want to go on this side or that side? All right, okay. Okay, now Eric is setting up the test. Now remember, if the needle, when we hit this with the pressure from the Fisher-Brauer concept, without any gasoline, if it goes about halfway across these numbers, over to about there, we're as good as Chrysler is. If it goes to within about a half an inch of the end of this tip right here, then we are as good with the smallest V8 engine Chrysler made as they are with the biggest V8 engine that they made. Okay? All right, you ready to do it? Everybody ready? How about the camera? You guys ready to film this? Okay, let's go for it, Eric. This is my favorite part of the whole show. Go ahead and pull her down. This is my favorite part of the whole show, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what in the world is going on here? You remember that if we went about halfway through the numbers, we were as good as Chrysler was. So this was going to be about as good as Chrysler was. If we got out here about an inch away from the tip, that was going to be as good as Chrysler was in the biggest V8 engine that they made. What in the world is this out here? Now, by the way, when you get off this scale, it kind of goes askew, and you will notice it went real askew. See how askew that thing went? Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of power shown right here. Now, the reason why I was advertising for Sears Roebuck in this is because Sears Roebuck sponsored this demonstration, and the reason why I say that is they guarantee these torque wrenches for life. Oh well, I figured the least I could do is give them a commercial advertisement. Now, what we're going to do next for you is we're going to run this engine. Now, this engine is the very first engine that was ever modified. Eric modified this in about a 40-day period of time from the time that I talked to him. He had to prove two things with this engine here so that we could put money into developing the rest of it, including this one right over here. Now, this engine right here, the way it sits now, actually we're going to run that for you now. It has got two exhaust ports in it. So there's an exhaust port here, an exhaust port here, and so what's happening is we're running CO2 in this engine. We got a CO2 tank here, we're running it right into the engine, and as it comes into the engine, it's going to be exhausting out here. The reason why we did that on the road primarily was because it's user-friendly. We could use pentane, but everybody'd stink pretty bad and get a headache. And so this is user-friendly, CO2. We're going to run the engine, but if there's an exhaust here, then you're going to hear noise, right? So you'll hear some noise when the engine runs. We're going to show you that you can get the RPMs that you're looking for over here. And by the way, the pressures on those cylinders using CO2 for those technical people in the crowd is pretty much exactly what we're getting out of the finished model. And this unit right here, by the way, when we run it, you'll notice that the CO2 hitting the heads is condensing on the heads. It's coming out here in white as snow. So it'll be coming out here in a stream, white as snow, as it's running. Now, another thing we're going to do is I'm going to caution my associates here that they take it easy with this thing because this engine's got so much power that it wants to walk right off of that frame. And by the way, for those people who wonder how much torque there really was in that engine, we can tell you now from calculating it on the 4th engine model that we have now, and the torque on that engine would be between 1,500 and 1,600 foot-pounds. Now, by the way, how much torque is that? The largest semi-truck in the world, you can run it on 1,450 foot-pounds. So we're saying that when we modified that engine right there, that engine could drive the biggest semi-truck in the world, the smallest V8 engine Chrysler made. So there's a lot of torque there. All right, so we are going to run it for you so you can see the RPMs and you can see this run. Are we ready to do that? We got Big Mike up here to catch it if it starts falling, starts wanting to walk away from us. Go ahead and go with it. Everybody ready here? All right, go ahead. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the cost to modify the car that you're driving right now, we anticipate will be $1,500 or less. And then you will never, ever, ever stop at a gas station again with that car for the full life of that engine. You want to know what the life of the engine is? We anticipate, because of the cooler temperatures, because we aren't using high temperatures here, we're using very, very low temperatures with low temperature gases. We would anticipate that the life of that engine, because of the difference in the power stroke and the way that we're getting the energy on that unit, is giving you a steady pressure all the way through the cycle without tearing your bearings apart. And also, that engine will run a lot cooler, and so therefore will last a lot longer. We anticipate that this engine, once you rebuild it, the same engine in the car you're driving now, you'll get approximately 500,000 miles before you have to rebuild it again. 500,000 miles on one rebuild. And because you got hydrocarbons that slip past the rings, they dirty the oil. Because you don't have that anymore, because we're not burning anything in that engine anymore, you will never, ever, ever again have to change the oil in your car. Oil changes are over. No more oil changes. We'll just make time. Oh, yeah, no, I don't want that job. Okay, now, the next thing we want to show you, though, is we want to show you this engine right here. Now, this engine just came out of our R&D lab. This is one of the 2 models that we're finishing right now. The second model isn't quite developed. We were going to try to show you a model tonight that would run just on the energy in the air itself here. And so the ambient temperature would be sufficient to run the engine. In other words, the engine would just want to run all the time. You'd be trying to brake it whenever you stopped, and that would be it. The brakes are off and you go. This engine right here doesn't run on that same concept, but this engine, Eric is going to show you. He worked a lot to put this together. What we did was, we can't completely run the engine the way it's going to be made to modify to your car, because what happened was we found out that we had some seals over here, and the seals were popping whenever we put it in, so we had to change the valving structure on it, and we didn't have time to change it. So we are going to run this engine for you. Eric is also going to show you that you can accelerate and decelerate the engine with this little unit right over here, just like you would with the foot feet in your car. And so Eric is now going to turn this one on and run this one for you and show you the acceleration and the deceleration. And so he will run that for you now. This one isn't going to make noise. Okay, you see the engine? See, he's slowing it down. Okay, so that's the engine right there. He can slow it down, speed it up. We can't go real fast with it because we'll break the seals. So we have to solve the seal problem before we can completely change it. But you notice the engine right there? That's a 4-cylinder engine right there, running. There's no noise, without the exhaust, and he can accelerate and decelerate it. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, the low temperature phase change engine is right here, right around the corner. Now we anticipate it's going to take one more rebuild. We can change these so that we don't blow the gaskets and then blow the seals, and then we will be ready to start modifying cars. So
this is my brother in Jesus Christ, my friend, compadre, a man who his integrity is like God's itself. And this is a man you can trust. His name is Dr. Victor Fisher. I waited 8 years for this moment. Now, I have always believed in him. I mean, you know, I have always believed in him. And let's get this thing on. Gotta put it kind of around. You hold that right there, and I'll put it on here. Hold that. All right. We got you. All right. Okay, let's see if we can hear him.
I'm not listening.
All right.
Okay.
All right? Okay. Now, Dr. Victor Fisher is the man who developed the most efficient engine cycle in the world. This is the man who proved that they built the steam engine wrong. Everybody who ever studied engineering, this man took a giant step right
it me? Can you hear me now? Is that okay?
You gotta kind of put it right up there in front.
Right there. Okay.
All right, that's good.
No, that's good. Well, thank you very much for your kindness, and I want to also thank you from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity to get back with Dennis and extend my research into another new era, and that is the CO2 engine, which we call the cryo engine. Cryo is means cold. All of the activity, internal combustion engines, and all the normal steam engines that we've seen in the past have all been classified as heat engines, including my engine that I utilize in the supercritical water oxidation process, which is will revolutionize the wastewater and municipal solid waste treatment activity in the future. That required a heated water system. Through your generosity and supporting Dennis, we have now embarked on a new venture, and that venture is building the cryo engine. The cryo engine is exactly the same basic information or basic theory that was applied for in our original patents for the original Fisher heat engine. In fact, we specifically realized that other fluids other than water was a viable potential. Fluids like ammonia, CO2, freon, propane, various other fluids that do vaporize at relatively low temperatures. The jumping into the CO2 era, instead of going through the ammonia cycle, which was what we were just about to do in 1988, we in fact bought the basic system for the ammonia engine, and then, as you all know, there was a change in the activity.
I had to go to the country club.
You had to go to the country club, right. And so when we finally were reconnected through God's help, I'm sure, that Dennis said, well, let's go on and see if we can do something in the cryogenic area, or to take advantage of the atmospheric heat. And after our first meeting, my wife and I returned to Evanston, Illinois, where we were living at that time. And I spent about a week or two and called Dennis up and said, I think we can do it in one jump, by utilizing carbon dioxide with the Fisher cycle. And he said, let's do it. And so I returned to New Jersey, and he has given me the support, fullest support, to build a sort of a breadboard, a machine that is a universal test platform, and that can utilize or be able to withstand the high potential forces that we might experience, and in a safe mode. The device that you saw, many of you saw last night in the back room, is the result of that activity. Nearly 60 computer drawings were generated in the past 2 months, and this, what you're seeing there is the net result of that. Within the last week or so, we were able to proof test the validity of the design and its capability to be a good workstation. We now are in the process of closing the loop utilizing CO2, which obviously has never been done before. Many people have had used CO2 in an open loop status, but never returning the discharge, the exhaust, so to speak, back into a heat exchanger and then recycling it again into the engine. Since most of my experience has been with water, though water and CO2 have a lot of very, very similar characteristics, I thought I designed this workstation, or this laboratory unit, to around those basic assumptions that I found in the heat engine with water, which has to get heated up quite high temperatures. We found yesterday, to be precise, that CO2 in this type of temperature that we're seeing, we're experiencing these last couple days, gets really heated up, like Dennis demonstrates over there. Really, really, really gets heated up to such a point that it is almost unusable. And what I mean by that is that basically the Fischer cycle, as explained in the patents, require liquid in and liquid out. What was happening was that the liquid was so hot coming out of the heat exchanger that when it was put into the room temperature warm cylinder, 100% of the liquid vaporized. And I ended up with a gas as my discharge. That is contrary to the Fischer cycle, and that means that you can never recondense it back into the liquid form. You have to have liquid to recondense it before in the exhaust area. So what we're doing this morning is we've obtained a couple 100 pounds of liquid of dry ice, and we're actually chilling the heat exchanger. Now this is really interesting because it reminds me of my first exposure with Dennis. He had a heat pump that he was selling and demonstrating, and he had a chamber, a large chamber, that was a big refrigerator, and he put his heat panels and his collectors for his heat pump in this chilled down chamber, and to demonstrate that he can still extract a large amount of heat from the cold air, what we normally think of as cold air, and transfer that into the house and have it nice and warm in the house. Here it's turning out with the cryo engine that it wants to operate in a cold environment too, like that. So this really opens up some real interesting future potentials. And that is that in Lake Michigan, Lake Erie, especially Lake Superior, you have some fairly cold water, and you could, if we can extract the heat from even those cold waters, we could actually propel a boat without any fuel. And that would have obviously a major commercial advantage. not having to carry fuel, which would be increase our payload, and also the cost of fuel. So still by extracting.
Let me add one thing to that. If you look at a boat, what do you have driving the boat? A diesel engine with a big cylinder. Now take that diesel engine out with the big cylinder and put a Fisher cylinder there, which is exactly what the supercritical oxidation plant is.
That's right.
Then you take the energy from the ocean and you'd be able to run that. He's saying that we're talking about being really close to that.
That's right. That's exactly right. Now, this is a whole, from a scientific point of view, it's a whole new chapter because all basic and advanced thermodynamics make the claim that 69 degrees is the cold sink, so-called cold sink, and that no heat engine can operate any lower temperature than 69 degrees because that's the atmospheric average temperature. And so all heat engines have to be 69 degrees or hotter. Here we're operating an engine at less than 69 degrees. And
it's impossible.
That's right. Like if you use gas law, and needless to say we're using liquid vapor law, and the phenomena we discovered with water was the initial kickoff, but what we're discovering today and tomorrow and the next week is going to be where the real revolution actually starts. We're, as I say, right at the moment, charging up the unit for the first time with dry ice as our to keep as our heat source. Yes. We anticipate, though, for those that are the next step forward, we anticipate that this exercise of putting dry ice in is really a startup exercise. That once the system is up and running and is operating at a normal load, that it will have a tendency to also reduce the temperature of the heat exchanger, and then a balance will occur between the atmospheric temperature and the heat exchanger.
Correct me if I'm wrong. What would happen then is we'll use the dry ice to get it started,
right,
and then it would equalize,
right,
not needed.
Right.
So you run it 24 hours a day and night, 365 days and nights a year. If you don't shut it off, it just keeps going. You don't need to do it again. And without dry ice, we may find we can take blowers and use blowers to cool it down to get the start. And you don't have to do it again unless you want to shut it off and start it again.
Well,
is that right?
Exactly right.
Okay.
The first unit that Dr. Fisher built was a huge unit, single piston. We used the CO2, but we didn't know enough about the CO2 that it actually froze after a couple of minutes of running. And it would require so much heat to thaw the thing out that we wouldn't be ahead of the game at all. We certainly did learn an awful lot about carbon dioxide, CO2, and the kind of power that it had at room temperature, but also the low side. We had to get interested in how we could keep that from freezing on the bottom end of the cycle. So this was just the beginning of a very, very interesting learning curve, both for Dr. Fisher and for us in research. But this shows that the concept, we all knew there was plenty of power that shows the concept really does work.
than the unit. As you see, the pressure is still right about at the vapor pressure level, around 800 psi. The pump is the circulating pump right now is idle, waiting for the liquid level to come up enough over a standpipe for it to pick up. If it doesn't pick up enough, one of our
Go ahead and turn us on here. Go ahead, Rick. Now you'll see when it starts off, this wheel in here is actually going around very slowly. So if you get that shot of that, that wheel is very slow. It only runs at about 10 revolutions per minute. Now at 10 revolutions per minute, this thing would just sit and run and run and run for probably 100 years without any maintenance. But it, of course, is geared up to run a smaller wheel, which runs a bigger wheel, which runs a smaller wheel, and makes these these one over here take off pretty good. Now the engine cycle is a single piston. It's not a double piston. It's one piston. You notice the liquid level, if you can see that close up on it, the liquid level is just sitting there fluctuating. That means we're dumping liquid into the exchanger and we're pulling liquid, the receiver, and we're pulling liquid out to the exchanger. So it just sets and fluctuates. It'll do that 24 hours a day, all night long. You'll always have liquid in the bottom side of this engine. The CO2 liquid looks a lot like water. Now, this is not made for power. We do have some power being expressed right here. This was made to merely prove the concept that it could run a 24-hour period of time just on the energy we're taking from the air. So this has already been proven, it's already been well documented, and we have the only engine in the world that will just sit there and perpetually run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year from the energy we take out of the room here. Now that's pretty remarkable with this one because we got one piston, and when you got one piston, it pushes down on a flywheel. And let's say we're talking about this one here, we would only have push as it's pushing down 90 degrees of the turn of that wheel. That means that 270 degrees it's trying to stop. So it tries to start, you get the power for 90 degrees, and the momentum takes it all the way
270 degrees to the top so it can get another hit and do it again. This was a real balancing act to build this unit and to get it to do this, and we're quite proud of this. It's a very remarkable achievement because it's never been done before in the history of mankind. Now, you got a pressure gauge on the top, and the pressure gauge is about 800 pounds per square inch. And if you know anything about CO2, that tells you that the temperature in the room is about 68 degrees. And of course, if you can read a thermometer, you can see that the temperature in the room is about 68 degrees. So our pressure at the top is 800 and something. Our pressure at the bottom is about 600. So the differential between the top and the bottom of about 200 is what's powering this. All right, now, we've let it run for a little while, so what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to shut it down. Okay, now I'm going to take you guys to another one that we got, the twins, and I'm going to show you another version of this, but this time I'm going to show you one that's got 2 cylinders. So this was just a little bitty baby model with 1 cylinder pushing down on a wheel, and believe it or not, it made enough momentum to continue to return the piston. There's just 1 piston in there. Now the next model that we built was a 2 piston. We said, okay, if 1 piston does this and there's not much power, if we put the 2 opposing pistons together so that they would be returning each other, we would have not double power, but a hit for 90 degrees, coast 90 degrees, a hit for 90 degrees, coast 90 degrees. We would have 4 times the power. So we also have about a 4-inch travel on this piston. So on the other model that we built an 8-inch travel. So it goes twice as long, there's twice the volume on 2 different pistons with 4 times the power times the exponential component of it being so much larger in volume. And I think you're going to be very impressed with the expression of power we're going to show you on the next model. Now you're also going to see a very big one. You're going to say, man, I don't want nobody putting that on my house. It's going to be as big as your house. And it's only going to be 2 pistons. Why did we do that? Well, we calculated there was some tremendous power in this unit, and we didn't know how we were going to contain the power or what to expect when we built these pistons bigger. So what we did was we ran out and bought these very, very expensive, well-engineered, existing huge compressors, and we took the top off of them to use all of the mechanics in that to get the shaft rotation. So we built them around some great big indestructible Rolls-Royce compressors so that way if it was more power than we anticipated, we could control it. If it was less power than we anticipated, it wouldn't really matter because we can control it too. So you always in research build them too big when you start because you don't know how big is. And you don't want to build them too small and kill nice guys like Rick here. Okay, you want to try to keep these guys around. You put a lot of education into them and everything. You want to hang them or keep them around for a while. So let's go into the room. We'll just cut the tape and we'll start again on the twins, and I'll show you those twins in action. All right, now this time we're back over here at somewhat of a bigger unit. This is the twin unit. The other one that we had was called the Joy. It was a single piston. This is a double piston unit. You can see the 2 pistons here. Now, this is bigger than anything we want to put at your house, and you'd be quite intimidated if we came with something as big as this. But this is the big Ingersoll Rand compressor. So we bought this ready-made, and we took the top off that compressor so that we could use the rocker arm and all of the mechanics necessary to get rotation. Over here we got the other compressor, and this one is facing that one, and as it goes around, as the piston comes down, it causes shaft rotation on this shaft, and they're facing one. Go ahead and turn us on here. Go ahead, Rick. Now you'll see when it starts off, this wheel in here is actually going around very slowly. So if you get that shot of that, that wheel is very slow. It only runs at about 10 revolutions per minute. Now at 10 revolutions per minute, this thing would just sit and run and run and run for probably 100 years without any maintenance. But it, of course, is geared up to run a smaller wheel, which runs a bigger wheel, which runs a smaller wheel, and makes these these one over here take off pretty good. Now, the engine cycle is a single piston. It's not a double piston. It's one piston. You notice the liquid level, if you can see that close up on it, the liquid level is just sitting there fluctuating. That means we're dumping liquid into the exchanger, and we're pulling liquid out of the receiver, and we're pulling liquid out to the exchanger. So it just sets and fluctuates. It'll do that 24 hours a day, all night long. You'll always have liquid in the bottom side of this engine. The CO2 liquid looks a lot like water. Now, this is not made for power. We do have some power being expressed right here. This was made to merely prove the concept that it could run a 24-hour period of time just on the energy we're taking from the air. So this has already been proven. It's already been well documented. And we have the only engine in the world that will just sit there and perpetually run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year from the energy we take out of the room here. Now, that's pretty remarkable with this one because we got one piston, and when you got one piston, it pushes down on a flywheel. And let's say we're talking about this one here, we would only have push as it's pushing down 90 degrees of the turn of that wheel. That means that 270 degrees it's trying to stop. So it tries to start, you get the power for 90 degrees, and the momentum takes it all the way 270 degrees to the top so it can get another hit and do it again. This was a real balancing act to build this unit and to get it to do this, and we're quite proud of this. It's a very remarkable achievement because it's never been done before in the history of mankind. Now, you got a pressure gauge on the top, and the pressure gauge is about 800 pounds per square inch. And if you know anything about CO2, that tells you that the temperature in the room is about 68 degrees. And of course, if you can read a thermometer, you can see that the temperature in the room is about 68 degrees. So our pressure at the top is 800 and something. Our pressure at the bottom is about 600. So the differential between the top and the bottom of about 200 is what's powering this. All right, now, we've let it run for a little while, so what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to shut it down. Okay, now I'm going to take you guys to another one that we got, the twins, and I'm going to show you another version of this, but this time I'm going to show you one that's got 2 cylinders. So this was just a little bitty baby model with 1 cylinder pushing down on a wheel, and believe it or not, it made enough momentum to continue to return the piston. There's just 1 piston in there. Now the next model that we built was a 2 piston. We said, okay, if 1 piston does this, and there's not much power, if we put the 2 opposing pistons together so that they would be returning each other, we would have not double power, but a hit for 90 degrees, coast 90 degrees, a hit for 90 degrees, coast 90 degrees. We would have 4 times the power. So we also have about a 4-inch travel on this piston. So on the other model that we built an 8-inch travel. So it goes twice as long. There's twice the volume on 2 different pistons with 4 times the power times the exponential component of it being so much larger in volume. And I think you're going to be very impressed with the expression of power we're going to show you on the next model. Now you're also going to see a very big one. You're going to say, man, I don't want nobody putting that on my house. It's going to be as big as your house. And it's only going to be 2 pistons. Why did we do that? Well, we calculated there was some tremendous power in this unit, and we didn't know how we were going to contain the power or what to expect when we built these pistons bigger. So what we did was we ran out and bought these very, very expensive, well-engineered, existing huge compressors, and we took the top off of them to use all of the mechanics in that to get the shaft rotation. So we built them around some great big indestructible Rolls-Royce compressors so that way if it was more power than we anticipated, we could control it. If it was less power than we anticipated, it wouldn't really matter because we can control it too. So you always in research build them too big when you start because you don't know how big is. And you don't want to build them too small and kill nice guys like Rick here. Okay, you want to try to keep these guys around. You put a lot of education into them and everything. You want to hang them or keep them around for a while. So let's go into the room. We'll just cut the tape and we'll start again on the twins, and I'll show you those twins in action. All right, now this time we're back over here at somewhat of a bigger unit. This is the twin unit. The other one that we had was called the Joy. It was a single piston. This is a double piston unit. You can see the two pistons here. Now, this is bigger than anything we want to put at your house, and you'd be quite intimidated if we came with something as big as this. But this is the big Ingersoll Rand compressor. So we bought this ready-made, and we took the top off that compressor so that we could use the rocker arm and all of the mechanics necessary to get rotation. Over here we got the other compressor, and this one is facing that one, and as it goes around, as the piston comes down, it causes shaft rotation on this shaft, and they're facing one another so that they can give it rotation in the same direction. So when this one goes down, it's pulling that piston back up. When that piston goes down, it's pulling this piston back up, and all the action is on this shaft. Now, this baby here has got a lot of power. You saw that little wimp over there, and it didn't have much power because it's only got 90 degrees on a... This electricity right here, now you see it's upside down, but that's where it's at right there on the screen. Okay, 7. So we got 7 amps, 110. Okay, Ricky? Why don't you make sure your pump over there, right? Ricky's going to turn the pump on. We'll start pumping the CO2. Put it on there. Okay, can you see that one?
Yeah.
Got it? 8.9. 8.9. Okay, good enough, Rick. There it is. Going now. Making electricity. You're going up and down. That we're doing. In order to do that, I guess what I'll do first is I'll bring Marcia. You could maybe come out and help me, and Eric. We'll demonstrate a thing that we call the Sundance generator. Now, this is the Sundance generator right here. Actually, you know, maybe we could get some more help here, Rick, and we could turn it again. Do you think that would be a good idea? Can we turn it again? Because they can't really see the front end of it and see the most unique parts of this. So we're going to start turning it. While they're turning it, if we have a couple of other people, is there Terry, Mark, could you help them turn this? If you could help them turn this around, I appreciate it. Okay, while they're turning that, I'll tell you about it. This is the world's most unique generator because each one of these right here is a module. So we have a module inside. You can pull the module out, you can put the module in. This is sort of like the old fuse box. Do you remember the old fuse box where you took the fuse out and you put a fuse back in? So if your fuse blew, you just took one out and put it in. This would be like a fuse when you have a fuse blow. Now, it's kind of interesting because what is in here is windings. So all generators have windings. So they got these windings, and what happens to a generator if the windings break? You throw it away. What else can you do? That's it. It stops. Windings broke. Now it's a disposable generator. Throw that one away. Get another one online. Maybe it would be worth it to take it back and rewind it and rework the whole thing. Got to take it down. That's it.
Well, this generator right here is the most flexible to repair generator in the world, because as you're rolling along, you have 30 of these modules inside, and each of them have windings. They are the windings of the generator. Now, it doesn't need all 30 of them to be able to produce electricity. If you have one of them in there, you can make electricity. So if you make 1 kilowatt of electricity on one module, and you have 30 modules, how many kilowatts of electricity can you make? 30 kilowatts. And so if you had one of these, the windings broke, it got hot, the windings broke on it, and you were going to replace it, what would happen is a little LED light comes on and it says, hey, I'm broken. And then the customer would come out, just merely pull that straight out like you would a fuse in a fuse box, set it down, pick up another one, sit it right back in there again, and you would be repairing this generator while it is operating. You wouldn't shut it off. It'd be making 29K, and then it'd be making 30K again. 28K if 2 of them were broken out, and then it'd be making 30K again. So this generator is the most serviceable generator in the world, bar nothing. Also, this generator has all these different units, and so when you've repaired every one of these units, then you've got a brand new generator. We believe these modules will last for a 20-year period of time before any of them break, but anytime along the line that they break, you just pop one in. Now, we're going to run this generator for you. When we run it, we're going to run it at a very low RPM. The reason why is because, as our electrical engineer explains, in this building right here, we have a different power situation than we need to power this unit. We're running it with a 40 horsepower regular conventional motor. The primary reason is because our Hummingbird motor, this little motor over here, we had our 10 horsepower model here, and the guy who is working with us, who we finance, who is developing that motor, just had to drive all the way 2,000 miles here with our 50 horsepower motor, and he didn't make it earlier. So he just got in, actually, as a matter of fact, an hour ago, and he's a little bit tired from 39 or 40 hours of straight continuous driving. He is here, and we will run the 50 horsepower motor, but we don't have time to hook it up to this and run it with that. But you'll see the concept, believe me. And you'll imagine that this big 40 horsepower motor on here will be replaced with the 50 horsepower motor in the back. And when you see the size of the motor that's 40 and you see the size of the one that replaces it that's 50, believe me, you will realize that we got the most unique motor in the world. Anyway, just to demonstrate this generator for you, and then we'll demonstrate the motor, while we're running, while we're operating, we have to go at low RPMs because of the power in this school building is not exactly right for what we need to do. And if we ran it at high RPMs, we can do that, but if we run it at high RPMs, we will start busting all the bulbs in here. So every one of these bulbs will start popping because the voltage is going to be way above 115 volts. So as we keep running it, then we would start sending shrapnel out into the crowd here. We could do it like a Gallagher show, but we didn't have any of those little tarps or anything people could put over their face. So we just chose not to send shrapnel out to the crowd. So bear with us. We think that it's in your advantage for us not to do that. And we are going to be running it, but we'll run it at the lower RPM. But what we want to show you is that while it's running, making electricity, he will take one of these modules out, show you the module, and then we'll put the module back in to show you that we don't need all of the modules running together to be making electricity. Okay, and so that's what we're going to do for you. We're going to demonstrate the flexibility of this generator. It is a completely serviceable generator. Now, also, when he takes this out, what he'll have to do, we don't have these with the little finger screws on them, and so he's going to use a wrench to take them out because for the show here, this is our prototype model, and for a finished product, we'd have it in there where you can just pop them in and pop them out. But for now, we'll just unscrew it, and so he'll unscrew it for you as we're running, and they'll take it out, you can see it, and it's still producing electricity. Then they'll pop it right back in again for you and show you it's the most serviceable generator that's ever been invented in the history of the world. Easily repaired as we operate. Ready to go? Okay, they're going to run it at low RPM. Now, we got an RPM gauge here, too. Here we have an RPM gauge, and while he's doing this, you can see the RPMs. It'll be running at probably about 300 or 400 RPMs. Is that about all we can go? It's about 300-400 RPMs. It'll still be making electricity. When is the last time you saw a generator that's making electricity at 300 RPMs? 1600, 1800, 3600, but not 300. And so you'll see that's very unique because this generator will make electricity at the low end and the high end. The higher you take it, the more it makes. The lower you take it, the less it makes. And so it'll be lighting some lights with only 300 RPMs. And that's a very, very, very unique demonstration. Okay, you ready? It's got to get calibrated there. 380. We had a 380. What do you got on top of here? 390. Okay. So it'll get smoothed out. There you go. 380. You get a reading every once in a while. It's lighting the lights now at 380 RPMs. 377. Just at these low RPMs, it just reads sporadically. 377. Now we're making light. He's now removing one of the modules. So as he takes the module out, it's still making light. This would be you saw an LED light go off and you said, okay, I better repair that. If we were selling electricity with this right now, what would happen is our indicators, our computers would tell us we're down in output. Right there is the windings. That's the windings in the motor. You see the windings? That's the windings of this motor. So to repair those, all you do is take them out. You got an empty hole, then you just put them right back in again. No problem. Then you put it back in, it starts generating electricity again. You can see the spark in that if you looked in close in that as he put it in. It starts making electricity again, no problem. It doesn't, you never, ever, ever have to shut this engine, this generator down to make electricity. Now this one right here has been tested. Thank you. Thank you. You got it. Okay, this has been tested to put out 30 kilowatts of electricity. So this size generator, 35 inches square, puts out 30 kilowatts of electricity. Now if we had this unit at your house, it would put out 30, and the motor in the back is whining because we just got a motor, it's a brand new motor, and it has a bearing loose. And so you can hear the bearing in there about to go out in it. We got to take it back and let them service it. Brand new ball door motor, bearing is loose. But normally it would run quiet, you wouldn't have the noise because the motor doesn't really make a lot of noise. When you see this one run here, you'll see that it doesn't make a whole lot of noise either. Okay, hey, thanks a lot, guys. Thank you. So there is a very, 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 very flexible motor, generator. It is the most unique generator in the world, but it also makes electricity at any RPM, all the way up through the spectrum. That same unit, if we build it 8 feet square instead of 4 feet square, will produce 500 kilowatts of electricity. We've done all the testing, we've got all the data. We can get 30 kilowatts with this one. We can get 500 kilowatts with an 8-foot square instead of this 34-inch square. Now, hold that thought because we're going to get into showing you a thing that we lovingly refer to as the power wagon. Something where we can put out a lot of firepower on a 45-foot trailer using this same exact technology just in a bigger array. Now the next thing that I want to show you is the driver motor that would run it. If I can get you guys to just come back over here for a minute, Mark, and get Rick and all the firepower here if he's available. if we could turn that back again, because I'd like to make another point here. I want you guys to see this from the side angle. Yeah, take your time there. Yeah, you just got one guy on this side. Hold off. We just got one guy in the back there, so one person in the back, so you got to move that one first. Where'd Ricky go? Have him come and go. Tell Ricky hang around. It's only 2 hours. Yeah, I think he's getting tired. I wore him out over the last 2 days. Okay, I want to show you this because I want you to be able to compare here. That's almost got it there. Maybe one more shot. I want you to be able to, now watch, Rick will come here exactly as you get that last shot done. You watch. Old Rick will be coming up. Here he is. Is he coming? Hold it. You guys are almost done. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Okay, that's good. That's it. Okay, don't need you, Rick. I do get my licks back in, Rick. Now, so what was the motor that just drove this generator, or that would drive this generator? This is a 40 horsepower motor. Now, this is a conventional motor. This is what conventional science would give you. This 40 horsepower is driving this big generator right here. 40 horses. Believe me, that's very, very heavy. Nobody's going to pick this thing up. Even Rick isn't going to pick that one up. This right here is the motor that got here an hour ago on a 2,000 mile ride. This is our 50 horsepower Hummingbird motor. So this is 50 horsepower, this is 40 horsepower, just to give you an idea about the size. This one right here, believe me, I would never do this with the other one. $50 horsepower. And if you notice that the back plate on here is the same size of the whole motor here. So imagine this motor mounted up here on this, and that right there. That motor and that generator is a home unit that will produce 30 kilowatts of electricity. How efficient will it produce those 30 kilowatts of electricity? Let's come over here and see how efficient this motor really is. You ready here, Rick? You're going to have to come for this anyway. Okay, now this motor right here is the Hummingbird motor. This is a very, very, very unique one. We had this already set up and ready to go before Ron got here finally with the 50 horsepower on his Odyssey, on his ride. So we're going to let Ron run this motor too, because he just rigged it up just now out of the back end of his car. He just got it here. So we'll show you the 50 horsepower does indeed run, and it's variable. We'll show you how variable it is. But over here we're set up to show you a 10 horsepower motor, test it, and even do some data on it so that you can see how much power is going into it from the 12 volt batteries. We have 8 12-volt batteries, 100 volts of electricity, actually 96 volts. So if we're feeding power into this at 96 volts, it's DC, that's DC batteries. It would be volts times amps equals watts. Volts times amps equals watts. So if you got 100 volts and you had 1 amp, how many watts would you be using? 100 watts. If you had 2 amps, 200 watts, etc. So we can measure how many amps we're drawing, and what we're going to do is do something very unique. We're measuring the power coming from the battery through this line right here. At the end of the show, if you want to come up and look at this and see that it's going from the battery, this is the only line from the battery. That's why we put the red tape around it. And it goes then into controller. So if we measure the power on this line with an amp probe, we can say, okay, we got X amount of amps going from the battery into this whole motor. Then we got a line coming from the motor back to a shunt. When it hits this shunt, it's going from the shunt back to the batteries. This is a shunt so that we can measure the power on the other side. I'm going to let my assistant tell you how we measure the power on that side.
All right, the shunt is a 50 millivolt, 50 amp shunt. So each millivolt of voltage drop across the shunt equals 1 amp. So if you see 1 amp or 1.5 amp, that's 1.5 millivolt, that's 1.5 amp.
Okay, so it's a 1-to-1 ratio, millivolts to amps. So whatever this says in millivolts back across this shunt is how many millivolts that are what? Going back from the motor toward the battery. So we're feeding from the battery, going back toward the battery, because believe it or not, contrary to conventional wisdom, this unit right here, and we do have data with this on scopes, you can get that available. We did a tour with this on the scope. We are feeding power back and forth. We got a DC source coming to this motor, and this motor is sending power back to the source. That is an AC wave. So we're getting AC power from DC source. It's flowing both directions, alternating current. So as it flows in, we measure it here. As it flows back, we measure it here. Now, wouldn't it be then, if you had a source of X and you were sending back Y, that X minus Y was what the motor was using? If you were sending 1 to the motor, or say 2 to the motor and getting 1 back, how many would the motor be using? 1. So actually what you would do to measure this is you would measure the power flowing in. So we'll take a reading on that. Then you would measure the power flowing back. We'll take a reading on that. And the difference between those two is the amount of amperage that we're using. We all know the voltage, it's 100 volts because you got 8 12-volt batteries here, 96 volts. So we'll turn this on and we'll do that. Now we're also going to light the lights. We're going to put a load on this because right here, this is a little 10 horsepower motor. Has anyone here ever seen a 10 horsepower motor before, a conventional one? How big is it? And this right here is a 10 horsepower motor. Isn't that a whole lot smaller? That's a lot smaller than any normal 10 horsepower motor. And so this is a 10 horsepower motor. Now it will easily run this 4 kilowatt generator. So we have a 4 kilowatt generator, and we have 4 rows of 10 light bulbs, 100 watts per bulb. So 4 rows of 10 100 watt light bulbs. That's 4 kilowatts of electricity. This little 10 horsepower motor is going to be making 4 kilowatts of electricity, and we're going to see with our own eyes the amount of electricity that it is using to do that. Okay? Okay, there's the reading. Okay, we got a reading of 1.0. Anyway, go ahead and run it up, ramp it up a little. Go ahead and ramp it up. Now he's going to ramp it on up. Now he just lit the lights. Actually, we are, now it's coming down. You see it coming down? So it was up there that just came right down. As soon as it gets past a certain RPM, it comes down. Now, where's it at right now? Can you read it?
You gotta move your thumb.
Can you read it?
No, hold it. Angle it up more.
Say it, like that?
No, the other way. Turn the red part up and the...
Red part up.
There.
How about like that? Can
yeah,
you read
that's
it?
perfect right there.
2.3? Okay, here you go. What does it say? How much? 1.2? Okay, this is this was 2.1 or 2.3, and that one's 1.2. So 2.3 is coming from here, going into the motor. 1.2 is coming back again. I just moved it. 1.2 is coming back again to the batteries. So if we're taking and we're lighting 4 rows of light bulbs, 100 watt light bulbs. Now, that would be 1 amp difference, right? 1 amp difference at 100 volts is how many watts? Somebody got it? 1 amp at 100 volts. I'm going to get over here if I have to pull that thing off. One of these light bulbs right here is a 100-watt light bulb. 1 amp at 100 volts is 100 watts. So here's the point. You see the power it takes to light that light bulb? That's how much power that motor is drawing from the battery. Do you see the light bulbs that are lit? 40. If you're drawing enough power to light 1 light bulb and you're lighting 40 light bulbs, what's the relationship? 40 to 1. That's good enough, Rick. Now, you would say, any scientist would say, you're out of your ever-loving mind. There's no way in the world you can be drawing 100 watts of power to getting 4 kilowatts of energy. You can't do it. Because there isn't enough power in these batteries that you could be doing this. And so how could you possibly do this on these 12-volt batteries? Well, it's real simple for you to do it because the power isn't coming from the 12-volt batteries. Where is the power coming from to make this motor run? We all know that there's no such thing as energy being created or destroyed, so it's not like we're just getting it from nowhere. It has to be coming from somewhere, and that's exactly right. It's coming from the magnets. So the power of the magnets inside this motor are actually taking energy from magnetic forces, just permanent magnets that always are magnetic. How long does a permanent magnet stay magnetized? Permanently. Well, we had one guy today, Walt today, was talking about the batteries that he's using are good for 99 years. So for 99 years, you could be sitting here and running, and then somewhere along the line, you're going to have to change the batteries. I mean, the magnets in the motor. So 99 years from now, you're going to have to turn it in. So it will sit and run and run and run and run and run with a little amount of energy in and a large amount of energy out. Now, what I'll do is have Ron just come here. If he's available there, we'll have him come out and turn on this motor here, unless you can, Rick. Is Ron around? Because Ron should be getting some sleep. Is Ron around? He's in the bathroom? Okay, I timed that one perfect. I tell you what, no problem. A guy that just drives 40 hours straight through without sleeping and gets here just to get the motor to us. So we just did get this motor. I think I'd feel more comfortable though having Ron run the motor. So we'll wait for him for a minute. If somebody go get him, somebody go to get him? Yeah. Okay, then we'll wait for him for a minute and we'll let Ron himself come out. Now Ron, when he comes out, you will see a scientist, a world-class scientist.
You want to show the power right away?
No, this man knows 7-syllable words, let me tell you. When he starts talking to you, boy, you're like, whew, man, my brain, I just can't handle all these big words. He's in a doctor frock, and he is a thermodynamicist and a specialist, and I mean, wait until you see him. And so Ron is going to come out now and he'll run his motor for you. Let me tell you something. Scientist is what? What is a scientist? Does a scientist have to have a white frock on? Does a scientist have to have gone to college? Does a scientist have to have studied the latest theories of electrodynamics? No. In my estimation, a scientist is a person who talks to God, or who God talks to. I believe that God is the author of all creativity. And God will reveal things to people, sometimes the least of people, so that he can use that to confound the wise. And let me tell you something, a lot of the people who get involved in these technologies do not have master's degrees or doctoral degrees in anything. There are people who have discussed this, who have discovered things, who God has revealed things to, who have just worked on these things, technical people, people who work on them night and day, who work on them like Ron has for 20 years, and you study a problem for a 20-year period of time and you want to solve it, it doesn't really matter what anybody else says can or can't happen. Sometimes it's dramatically to your advantage that you don't know what can happen, because then you can make it happen. I developed the world's most efficient heat pump. I did that. I did that with no degrees in science whatsoever. I did it because I was a salesman. I was looking for a low-cost energy system. I was looking for a better solar unit because Jimmy Carter was throwing money away. I was a salesman, and I got the idea that if you have a heat pump, why not take a heat pump, build it into a solar collector, and use a heat pump in the middle of the night to take energy from the sun to heat your house. I was looking for a unique unit. It didn't matter if it ran very well or if it was the most efficient thing on the planet. As long as it could be making energy in the middle of the night, I had an advantage over somebody else selling my system. I didn't know when I went to sell that system, make that system, that the refrigeration paradigm says you have to have 1 horsepower of compression to 1 ton of refrigerant to 1 ton of condenser. I didn't know that. It was 1 ton, 1 horsepower, 1 ton. I didn't know. So you had a ton of evaporation, horsepower of compression, ton of condenser. You had to have that. That's the refrigeration paradigm. I didn't know that. So I went out and I got the biggest evaporator I could find. We filled the whole roof of a house with solar panels so we could run Freon through the middle of it and let it evaporate across the roof. We said, how much do we need? I said, I don't know, but as long as you got any roof left, put one up there. We filled the whole roof with them. And then we ran back down to the compressor that we had in a heat pump. It was a 2 horsepower compressor. It's the only one we had. So we said, okay, use that one. So you got a 2 horsepower compressor. How much condenser do you need? We didn't know. We went down to a refrigeration supply house and said, we need a condenser. What size condenser do you need? I don't know. What's the biggest condenser that you got? Well, look, you got to at least know what your vapor pressures are. You got to at least know what your thermodynamic cycles are, how much you're trying to put through it, what your temperatures are going to be. And I said, you don't have to cuss at me. We got cash. We can afford it. I said, just give me the biggest one that you got. He said, well, I got a 6-ton sitting out there. And I said, oh, we'll never carry that. He says, it doesn't weigh 6 tons, dummy. You just put 6 tons of refrigerant through it. He says, you can get that in the back of your vehicle. We said, so great, we'll take it. We took it down and we put it down, a 6-ton. We have a 2 horsepower compressor. How big should it have been? A 2-ton. 2 horsepower, 2-ton. We turned that thing on. We didn't know how much refrigerant to put into it, so we just started dumping refrigerant in. We got the biggest bottle they had, a 50-pound bottle of refrigerant. You put 7 pounds in a 5 horsepower compressor. We put 50 pounds in our 2 horsepower compressor. We had it flooded through the middle of the system. We just kept flooding it, and I said, well, just keep flooding it until it runs. How do we know? Well, just as soon as it runs, we know we got enough. That thing took off, started running just as the 50-pound bottle ran out, thank God, because it had all that evaporator to go through. And it started running, and it started making heat, and it started making hot water, and that was it. That was all the science that went into that. Do you know that that system revolutionized the heat pump industry? It revolutionized it. It rewrote the whole book on the heat pump industry. How? It did it because we were proving that you didn't need 1 ton, 1 horsepower, 1 ton. We later on found that we can put 6 tons with 2 horsepowers with 6 tons, and we can compress 3 or 4 times as much Freon as they could with a 1-ton compressor. And I wound up getting energy, 1 unit of energy in for 12 units of energy out on a refrigeration system, while General Electric couldn't get any more than 1 in for 5 or 6 out max. What was the difference between me and General Electric? They knew what the book said, I didn't. That was the whole difference. And if you don't know what the book says, then you don't know. And that's how a lot of this stuff gets done. Ron, I got a whole audience of people here, and I know you're tired, but what I thought we might do is run that 50 horsepower.
I had to go give me a painkiller for this shoulder. It was just killing me.
But, you okay? You gonna be all right?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, in 15 minutes or so, it should, with 1,000 milligrams of hydrocortisone, it should quit hurting. We'll always swear that it should have.
Well, we got a big old belt of something back there, too, probably. Okay, now this is the 50 horsepower here. This just got bounced 2,000 miles and Ron just came in. There we go. Okay, there's this 50 horsepower motor right here, same size. That would be the driver, just as efficient as the one we just tested. That one was set up to test. Exactly the same technology. And so over there you were seeing this input to output over here that was incredible. You would have that technology connected to that generator. And so here you are, and you can vary it. Ron can show you right here that if you even wanted to do something exotic like put this onto a car, he can show you how effective this can be.
Now we're going to get him.
That's the foot feed. Now he went for it.
But the nice part about it is, it behaves like a regular gasoline engine. That's what I tried to do, is to duplicate it so that it would behave so that the little old lady from Pasadena wouldn't have to go to school to learn how to drive an electric car. Well, it drives just like a regular gasoline car. Just step on it and go.
Thanks a lot, Ron.
Let's see. I had a problem working this out. I even put circuits in here so that reverse, in case that somebody wanted to use reverse on here to back up, which I did in a Sport Fury one time. I met this guy going down the highway. He was doing 50 miles an hour in the opposite direction. So I stomped on the brakes, hit reverse, and outrun him. And when I come around to him backwards, he liked to run off the road, scared the hell out of me. He says, "Don't ever do that to me again." Well, I got to thinking that somebody could be as crazy as I am and try to go full speed in reverse. So I put a place for a relay in here in the event that we was to hook this up for using the motor for reverse instead of using the transmission with the low speed. Why, they couldn't achieve 50 miles an hour in reverse and drive out the backside of the barn. You know, it could happen. Okay, yeah. You try to make everything as safe as you can, because the saying that I've used is we try to make it idiot-proof. And in making things idiot-proof, sometimes they have to be a little bit hard to make a mistake with. But on the other hand, we keep people from killing each other too accidentally.
Yeah, well, thanks a million for running it for us. So you got a foot feed right here. You can drive this up or down based upon the foot feed, just like you would drive a normal car engine. So if you have any ideas about that, like possibly sometime throwing that into a car, that's hold that thought. That's where we're headed. Also, putting on the back end of this right over here so that you can run a generator, you can provide 30 kilowatts of electricity at your house. Hold that thought too, because that's exactly where we're going there too. I'm gonna let you get some sleep, Ron. Or do you? Yep. Yeah, that's it. There you go ahead and get some sleep, buddy. So now
the old electric motor. So we got the alternator, the
vacuum pump and the power steering pump.
Yep.
So everything in the car will work.
Everything in the car goes. And there we go, down the road. Down the road, Charles Perrault.
So now let's reason together. If you've got a motor over here that you can put use the amount of electricity through the batteries to light that light bulb right there, and yet you're lighting all of those light bulbs, where in the world would you get the power to have that motor continually run? Couldn't you just put some of the power that you have there right back into the process? That's exactly what we are doing. And over here, and we're putting together the technology right now to do that, to take the excess power back from this, put it right back into the process, and it just sits there and runs and runs and runs. Then that little motor right here, sitting right up here, because we didn't know that Ron would be able to make it here, so we couldn't mount that one here now. And that is the home unit that we're talking about. So that motor on that generator, and what does that mean? That means that I've never seen these motors run hot. I've never. You feel them, they don't get hot. And so that motor up there is an incredibly serviceable motor, and you're running on a generator that all you got to do is just, anytime it runs out of poop with one of the windings, just pop the windings out and pop another winding in. So that unit will produce 30 kilowatts of electricity. That's the unit that we intend to put on people's houses. We may put up something here that's a little smaller than this, that produces less kilowatts than that.